Hi, this is Rachel, and today I wanted to do a video on the way the word Lord is translated in the New World Translation of Jehovah's Witnesses. When you look at the New World Translation, the tetragrammaton, sometimes pronounced Yahweh or Jehovah, even though it does not appear in any New Testament manuscripts, or any of the Church Fathers' quotes of the New Testament manuscripts, any of that, they insert it into the New Testament over 200 times in place of the Greek word meaning Lord. So let's just look at a few of those examples. So let's look at this passage. When you read it in your New World Translation at Romans 14:8, you would read, "For both if we live to Jehovah, and if we die to Jehovah. Therefore both if we live and if we die, we belong to Jehovah." Okay? But let's look at it in another translation where they haven't taken the word Lord in Greek, which is kurios or kurie or kurio or something like that. But they leave that word there without replacing it. So let's look at this Romans 14:8 through 9 now, so we can get some context going. If we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. So whether we live or we die, we belong to the Lord. For this very reason, Christ died and returned to life, so that he might be the Lord of both the dead and the living. So when you read this passage in context, who is the Lord in this passage? Jesus Christ, who is Lord of all. You can see in that other passage in Romans that he's Lord of the living, he's Lord of the dead. We belong to the Lord who died for us, who lives for us. That's Jesus. All right, let's look at another passage where the name Jehovah is inserted for Lord. Romans 10:13, "For everyone who calls on the name of Jehovah will be saved." But when you read it with the original text, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Romans 10:13. And yes, this is a quote to Joel, where the original quote was talking about Jehovah. But as many cases in the New Testament, things that are considered to be only the domain of Jehovah God are assigned to Jesus. If you look at verse 9, Jesus is Lord, and the same Lord is Lord of all. This is the same Lord who we need to call on, and that's Jesus. And another point that I noticed in this passage is that Paul is talking about the Israelites. That's, his prayer for them is that they may be saved. And he also says in verse 14, how can they call on the one they have not believed in? And what I'm wondering is, wouldn't the Israelites already be calling on the name of Jehovah? Wouldn't they already know Jehovah? How would they already believe in Jehovah. They already have heard of Jehovah because they have been, calling on his name since early in the book of Genesis. So I think when you read this passage in context, it's clear that Jesus is Lord. So just again, if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Now, one thing I just want to look at is if you replace Lord in places where the New World Translation kept it as Lord, how would that change the meaning? Let's look at this verse, Romans 10:9, that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Jehovah and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. They wouldn't replace it that way, would they? You have Matthew 12:8, Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath. Jesus is Jehovah of the Sabbath. So you have to think, what are the reasons that Jehovah is replaced, it is inserted actually where the word Lord is. Some places, but not in others. And is this done to obscure the meaning of the text or to clarify it?